Cologne, the city on the Rhine with 1 million inhabitants. People with wide-ranging expectations of their city government and local politics. Some are annoyed about litter in recreation areas. Others complain of run-down sports facilities or inadequate roads and pathways. Responding to complaints or suggested improvements naturally involves money. And since the city's resources are not limitless, it's a question of setting the right priorities for the people of the city.
With tighter budgets, we have to provide more targeted responses and ensure we really stay attuned to what's important to people.
To this end, the city of Cologne is breaking new ground. To make closeness to citizens more than just a slogan, the city administration is inviting the people of Cologne, as experts in their own neighbourhoods, to join in tackling the diverse local challenges and setting priorities better.
We want local politics to be ever more local, focused on individual districts, boroughs, and right down to the interests of one's own neighbourhood and street. That's when we really get close to people and take politics out of the city hall and into people's homes.
Via the internet. In autumn 2007, Cologne was the first major city in Germany to launch a dialogue about local policies and budget planning via the new possibilities offered by Web 2.0. For 4 weeks, everyone could make their own suggestions on spending and saving in the fields of sport, green spaces and roads, pathways and squares. In the Klettenberg district, for example, where many children live, this concrete playground prompted many parents to join in the budget dialogue, including Beate Zimmermann. As a mother of 2 children, she's been upset about this eyesore for years.
In the late 70s, this concrete landscape was built to last forever, but it soon turned out to be a big mistake. There was a water pump which kept flooding the street, so it had to be disconnected. There used to be tunnels through the biggest concrete mound, which were always full of empty beer bottles, till they were closed up. It just wasn't a playground. Some even called it the ghetto playground. That's why I joined in with the People's Budget.
She found out about the city's new participation programme from a brochure sent out to all Cologne households.
I was very surprised and very pleased that in a major city like Cologne we have the chance to influence the budget. I couldn't believe it at first. I'd thrown the brochure away or ignored it. It was my husband who said, "That's something for you and your playground." I still couldn't believe it until I went to the meeting and realized it was so. We citizens could help make decisions.
Beate Zimmermann tries it out. First, she looks for her subject area in the online dialogue, using the brochure to follow what she should do. She gives her proposal a title, and then describes the shortcomings of the concrete playground as she sees them. She's asking for fresh funding for a child-friendly playground. So she puts her proposal in the category of spending proposals and sends it off. She soon gets to know the new internet possibilities of Web 2.0. From her desk, she can see whether she's been joined by other like-minded people who've also logged on to the online dialogue. It's the votes of other people which help to decide if a proposal is successful.
We received no negative assessments at all. Most of the other proposals had some votes against them, but we didn't have one. So there was no one here who didn't want this refurbishment.
People can not only suggest what the city should spend money on, or where it should cut spending, they can also examine other proposals, discuss them and support one another. Each registered participant has one vote on each proposal. He or she can reject or approve it. This creates a competition for the best ideas and also gives the city administration a league table.
The people's budget process provides a sort of social control mechanism through this assessment system. This ensures that only proposals with a broad support basis come to the top.
In return, the administration promises to list the 100 best proposals, check them in detail, and present them to the City Council for their decision, and promptly. The concrete playground in Cologne-Klettenberg was high up on the best list. Its remodelling into a modern, child-friendly playground takes just 9 months, from the proposal in the people's budget to the council decision and the completion of work.
It's important for people to see what's happening about what's been decided as soon as possible, not in 10 years' time. Budget allocation, then planning and implementation must be as tangible as possible. That's absolutely essential.
Das ist ganz, ganz entscheidend.
Electronic participation, e-participation for short, achieves what's impossible with traditional participation methods, such as public meetings, reaching a lot of people in a short time at reasonable expense. The more familiar and everyday the issues, the easier it is to get people involved and the more qualified their comments. Take the example of dangerous cycle paths. Bulging tree roots or curbstones between pedestrian and cycle paths cause risky manoeuvres. Narrow sections turn some cycle paths into veritable obstacle courses.
Drivers or passengers opening car doors, you just can't react in time. The cycle paths are very narrow. If you swerve, you can run into pedestrians. It's all very tight on the cycle paths in Cologne.
Even when a lot of people back something, as with safer cycle paths, the final decision as to which proposals are approved remains with the elected city council. And the people of Cologne accept this, evidently because the people's budget is being handled very approachably and transparently.
Our experience is that people responded very sensibly, not asking for castles in the air. That's partly because they knew how much money was available. It was completely transparent.
Wie viel Geld insgesamt zur Verfügung steht, also eine ganz transparente Angelegenheit. Und es ist auch so.
And they're also aware of the overall budget situation, so they were relatively restrained.
Relativ übersichtlich bis bescheiden waren. Es waren kleinere.
They address smaller issues, and when some major issue is called for, then people realize that we can and must be transparent about it. Because of the size of the investment, it would take more time for the planning, the scrutiny, and the funding.
Muss geplant werden, muss geprüft werden, muss finanziert werden.
It's also part of the success of the project that people become aware that they can participate. The city advertised via posters, letters and public meetings, as well as on the internet itself. And crucially, the Cologne media reported fully on the scheme in advance. And the city authorities were at pains to involve population groups who don't use the internet.
You have to take care not to exclude groups who happen to be unfamiliar with or averse to modern technology, who can't or don't want to use it. It's not up to us to tell people how they should do things. That's up to people themselves. So we deliberately include the telephone. We operate a call center. And we also accept written proposals, including petitions with multiple signatures. We then feed them into the internet system. The internet platform is the reference point where everything is brought together, and you can assess and vote on every proposal there. But that's not the only way to submit a proposal.
The Cologne press followed the people's budget attentively from the outset, which certainly helped promote public awareness during the 4-week participation phase in autumn 2007. Generally, the press don't handle the city authorities with kid gloves in Cologne, so their judgment, in retrospect, is all the more remarkable.
Der Anfang ist gemacht.
A start has been made. The initiative of trying out the idea of the people's budget here in Cologne has been successful.
Erfolgreich gewesen. Was gefehlt hat.
What was lacking was the possibility of influencing the issue of spending allocation beyond the small, very circumscribed areas of policy. Who gets how much money and why?
Wer bekommt wie viel und warum?
A balancing act the city has to master. On the one hand, the people's budget has to remain readily accessible and lead to concrete policy decisions. On the other, the city must defend itself against the charge of excluding many other areas.
Ja, wir haben ja, herauszufinden.
To find out which issues were of primary interest to people, we had a survey carried out, which revealed that the areas of green spaces, squares and sport were at the top of the list of wishes that citizens wanted the people's budget to tackle.
Halt an so einem Bürgerhaushalt haben.
Aber richtig spannend.
The crunch would come if people could say, don't spend money on this in order to spend more elsewhere. One issue is the rebuilding of the Civic Theatre and the refurbishment of the Opera House. Debating this expenditure as part of a people's budget, when people know about the massive cuts in the social sphere, in child and youth services, that would be really interesting. And I'm not sure we'd end up with such a smart theatre.
Ich bin nicht ganz sicher, ob wir dann tatsächlich so ein schickes Schauspielhaus bekämen.
Das nächste Mal könnte ich mir einige andere.
I can imagine other areas such as culture being included next time, and then another target group will be motivated to participate. But word gets round when people see in a couple of years that things really happen, that what they wanted has actually been done by the city.
Haben die von der Stadt auch gemacht.
Und wenn es gelingt,
If they succeed in opening up this great pot and still keeping the process manageable, it will be a huge opportunity for positive urban development, which major cities especially should use to strengthen and maintain the citizens' identification with their city.
mit der Stadt stärker wird und bleibt.
The Fraunhofer Institute for Intelligent Analysis and Information Systems at St. Augustine, the think tank that gave rise to the web-based approach to the second-generation people's budget. Unlike earlier procedures, citizen involvement is no longer limited to their being told that tighter budgets mean spending cuts. Instead, the new Web 2.0-based participation focuses on the knowledge and experience of the city dwellers. Via online moderated discussion forums, their expertise is made available for political and administrative consultation. The principle of this new approach is that its ease of use will enable all citizens to participate actively.
Wir haben diesen Gedanken.
We have been able to implement this principle by choosing a process that already exists, the petition process, of which ease of use is an outstanding feature.
Sehr einfach bedienbar ist.
I submit a proposal which can be commented on and evaluated.
Kommentiert werden, kann bewertet werden.
And finally, I have a list of various proposals, assessed and commented on by other citizens, sometimes by many, sometimes by fewer.
Kommentiert worden sind.
And then it's the authorities' job to deal with these proposals.
Mit diesen Vorschlägen auseinanderzusetzen.
Compared with traditional methods like public hearings or questionnaires, the Internet has proved to be a superior medium for actually getting people to enter into a dialogue.
Ich kann zu jeder Zeit.
I can join in whenever it suits me and leave when I want. I can say something but don't need to. I can just read what's there. I have far more possibilities to participate as I want than in a public meeting.
In der Bürgerversammlung kann.
Oliver Merker from the partner company Zebra Log helped develop the new process and moderates the People's Budget dialogue from his computer. The incoming proposals are sorted on the web according to topic in order to link them with other participants' contributions. But even the 10% who take part by email, SMS, computer fax or letter also find their contributions on the dialogue platform.
Also der Bürger hat ganz klar, das konnten wir sehen.
Over 90% of people favoured the Internet. evidently because the internet is so widespread by now and offers the most advantages.
Auch die meisten Vorteile bietet.
Diese Transparenz,
This transparency, this comprehensibility and the resulting participation culture are a new dimension that will be unimaginable without the internet.
die ohne das Internet eigentlich gar nicht vorstellbar wäre.
Simple, transparent and credible. And the level of participation in Cologne exceeded all the expectations of the city authorities. Nearly 5,000 proposals were posted on the dialogue platform.
Wir haben natürlich dafür Sorge getragen.
We did take the precaution of setting up a full-time team for the 4-week online phase.
Ein Team
The editorial team on the one hand and the moderator team on the other were able to handle all the proposals.
war, sich mit den
And in the end, it worked out fine.
auseinanderzusetzen.
But we didn't expect the numbers we got, nor could we have.
Auch nicht erwarten können.
The dialogue with the people of Cologne finally produced 10,000 active participants, over 52,000 evaluations, and more than 2,600,000 visits to the online dialogue platform by over 100,000 Cologne inhabitants. That's 1 in 10 people living in the city. Perhaps also as a result of the anonymous access, without commitment and guaranteed data protection.
Die Leute mussten sich zwar
People have to register, but don't have to give any personal information. You can do that, but you then lose a lot of participants.
tun, aber im Grunde genommen konnte
Basically, you could just post a proposal and leave again immediately. A lot of people did that, just left their proposal and never came back.
sind nie wiedergekommen.
But there were also a lot who came again and again, who registered themselves and also commented on and assessed other proposals.
Vorschläge kommentiert und bewertet.
For the other side of it, for the city administration and council to be able to follow the discussion and then assess the thousands of proposals and comments, the internet again proved to be an unbeatable medium.
Zusätzlich gewinnt man eben
An additional advantage for the follow-up evaluation phase is being able to fall back on a structured product. At the end of the process, the proposals are there in a pre-structured form,
strukturierte Form,
which makes the subsequent evaluation a lot easier than would be possible without the internet.
als dies ohne das Internet möglich gewesen wäre.
This type of citizens' participation seems to have gone down well with the people of Cologne.
Democracy is great, but till now you never had the chance of really influencing decisions. You could have your say, but it didn't count for much. This is the first time that things are really being taken up. So I'm all in favour and hope that many, many more will join in.
Und ich hoffe, dass noch viel mehr mitmachen.
Also im Moment auf jeden Fall. Also
The expectations have certainly been fulfilled. For me, for us playground campaigners. We are the first, and it's been implemented relatively quickly.
umgesetzt wurden und
I don't know if it's the same for other people's expectations,
Zeige,
whether we might be the showpiece project, so they can say, this will put us in a good light, we'll have the publicity, and the press will be there.
und was danach kommt,
What happens next, I don't know. I'll be asking others what they got out of
ist
it.
bei euch daraus geworden.
What happens next has already been decided in Cologne. The city intends to expand the dialogue into a permanent citizens' participation scheme via the internet. This will also reduce the costs considerably. For the first people's budget, the city calculated costs of 30 cents per inhabitant, including brochures, advertising and public meetings. As a routine measure, the costs will sink to a third of that.
Dieser Weg ist auch deshalb
There's no going back now, because via this qualitative form of citizen participation, people identify with their city completely differently.
mit ihrer Stadt.
They make clear what their concerns and needs are and don't shrink from suggesting spending cuts. 16% of the nearly 5,000 proposals were for spending cuts.
Und dieser
This new dialogue produces a very different sort of cooperation between the people and the politicians.
zwischen Bürgerschaft
We all know that without a civil society, without people's commitment, without their involvement in the main issues in this city, we won't be able to run the city in future. That's why there's no going back.
und deshalb ist dieser Weg unumkehrbar.
Citizens' long-term involvement will depend on how much the city authorities promote this participation idea. It's not just a question of exploiting the technical possibilities of the internet. Intelligent technology must be introduced into the routine running of local government. But is this possible in a major city?
Before the Cologne People's Budget, the idea was that people's budgets couldn't work for major cities. We've shown it works. Others will follow suit, which is good. Even federal and state authorities are thinking about it, which is great, because I believe budget consultation is one of the finest aspects of democracy. There's a lot to be said for establishing this on a broad basis, with a clear division of responsibilities. The council decides and the people participate, make proposals. And it can do a lot to combat disenchantment with democracy and so on. And that's gone very well.
If it's ensured that people's involvement doesn't end in nothing, then this procedure can result not just in proposals for concrete improvements, but also in a positive image for local government and citizens who are satisfied with their local administration and elected politicians. An innovation with long-term effects everywhere.
I would encourage colleagues elsewhere to try it. And once you've tried it, you get enthusiastic about it and want to continue with it.